I love people as I meet them one by one. People are just wonderful as individuals. You see the whole universe in their eyes if you look carefully. But as soon as they begin to group, as soon as they begin to clot, when there are 5 of them or 10, or even groups as small as 2, they begin to change. They sacrifice the beauty of the individual for the sake of the group.
I figure I do this real old school, which is turn the camera on and just start talking, even though I have really no idea what I want to say. It's been about a week since my last video. I like to try to do, a couple videos a week at least. Didn't do any this week. Didn't really have much inspiration. Just felt like everything in the media is Trump. I suppose there's stuff that I could talk about, but a lot of it seems like, oh, well, maybe that'd run afoul of YouTube censorship and things of that nature. And then I have things I want to talk about that I think, could go on YouTube, but just not sure who'd be interested. But I guess that makes me wonder, who am I doing this for? Sometimes I think it should be for me, but then I make decisions based on you. So then does that tell me it's not really for me, it's for you? Because when I started, it was for me. I know that when I first started doing this, it was all about me. Now it's all about you, or maybe something has, split equilibrium. Maybe it's half about me, half about you. I like to think it's all for me, but my own decision-making process betrays that that's not really true. Because if it was all for me, I'd just do what I wanted. But at this point, I don't really feel like I need to do it for me, because anything I'd say, I already know. But then I think maybe the video that would really be the best is the video that I would make that I would want to see. But I don't really want to see any videos. I mean, to be honest with you, most content on YouTube annoys the hell out of me. The stuff that I do watch is mostly garbage that I don't even really want to watch. It's just stuff that I put on to distract myself. I don't really go on YouTube looking for anything deep or profound or philosophical or anything like that. And when people do try to make that, I'm just like, oh, what a bloviating nitwit that person is. Which I'm sure is what most people, maybe not most, I don't know. What many people think about me anyway. Bloviating nitwit. But I guess there's worse things to be in this world. You could be someone who doesn't speak at all. Someone who just keeps their mouth shut. Then again, maybe some people should do that. I saw this ad for a gas station. Chain of gas stations. They're called Maverick gas stations. Saw it on a YouTube video. And the language used in the ad was very aspirational, inspirational, frontiersy. I don't remember the exact language, but it was a guy with a deep voice talking about, forging your own path and going your own way and defying expectations and, all this stuff. And I'm just like, this is for a gas station. And it kind of became indicative to me of a culture that has devalued everything that is sacred. Because you're using the language and the aesthetics of this very inspirational, very human thing about forging your own destiny and going your own way and embracing the individual. But all of it is so wrapped in falsehood, because what it's really about is shop at our fucking gas station. And it's like, how do you think that your gas station, where people go to buy petroleum and, Tic Tacs and cigarettes and cheap American piss water beer, like, how is that some kind of like rugged individualistic thing? It's not. And I just wonder why they even put out those kind of ads anymore. Like, does anyone actually get that feeling deep down inside when they hear the ad talk about that? It's hard for me to believe that that's the case. So it really just feels like what it's doing is cheapening that kind of rhetoric, cheapening that kind of language, making it to where we almost don't believe it ourselves. You know, taking the language of individualism and making it subservient to some capitalistic enterprise or some product. Do you really think you're going to connect those two things in people's minds? Like the next time I think rugged individualism and forging my own path, I'm going to think a gas station convenience store? Is that the intent? Or is the intent to make me devalue that language? I remember hearing recently about a boomer in my sort of sphere of people that I know and know about that is kind of falling into a little bit of a conspiracy trap about the water. They're scared of the water, scared of even filtering it. Tap water they hate. And the person they were telling all this to asked them, so what do you trust? And then they said, I only trust bottled water, which a lot of bottled water is really just tap water in the first place. But I thought it was so interesting that there is this fringe conspiracy theory that ultimately works to the benefit of giant corporations who are trying to commodify water. Not trying to, they have. Make you distrust the tap water and only trust their water that you have to pay for and comes in a planet-polluting plastic bottle. Did these people manufacture the conspiracy theory against our tap water? And, you know, if so, does that mean that I am a conspiracy theorist about the conspiracy theory? I guess I am, even by asking that question, right? I think that there are a lot of things that occur in this country that I don't know if they are psyops or not, but they feel like psyops. And I don't believe that the intent of these psyops is to take us over or whatever, or prepare us for the New World Order. I think most of it just serves the naked interest of capital. The architects of submission, I've taken to calling them, because that's what they really do. That's what they really are. They want submission, they want compliance. And when I say they, a lot of people start to ask, you know, who's they? Who's they? Because people are tired about hearing about this nebulous they out there. So I like to make sure that I every once in a while tell you exactly who the they are. And it's not some secret shadowy cabal. I'm not talking about the lizard people. I'm not talking about some, you know, high council elders of Zion kind of crap. What I'm talking about is simply the moneyed interest in this country. The people who have power and influence in the spheres that control public sentiments, public discourse, financial institutions, so on and so forth. I'm talking about the Pentagon, I'm talking about Wall Street, I'm talking about leaders of industry, military, etc. But I think that, you know, the people who control us are exactly the people who we know control us. But I think that we don't have an awareness of their tactics at all times. So, you know, I watch these commercials that use the language of humanistic inspiration and fortitude and strength to sell a gas station or to sell a truck or to sell whatever product. And I think to myself, are they using that language because they want me to associate that language with their product? Because it seems almost impossible at this point that that could be it. Because I don't think even one single person does that. Or are they saying that to numb us to that language so that we never actually internalize any of it? Do they do it to cheapen that language? Like a rock, ooh, like a rock. When I was living with my first girlfriend, she had a Bob Seger album. And I listened to a lot of the songs on there. I'm like, wow, Bob Seger is actually a pretty cool singer. Got a lot of very powerful, emotional songs. But when it got to Like a Rock, I could not take the song seriously at all. because I just associated it with truck commercials. I don't even remember for which brand. That song, to me, it didn't feel like whatever the authorial intent was. It just felt like I was watching listening to an extended truck commercial. And I asked myself, are they trying to play upon affections that exist for this song and transfer them to that truck? Or are they trying to cheapen the song? Or is cheapening the song just a side effect? I feel like either it's designed to cheapen things in our eyes, or that's just a side effect that they don't care about. But either way, I hate it. I hate how everything is a dollar sign, a price tag. Everything is reduced to some sort of monetary value. I mean, even these videos, I'm gonna put ads on this. I have to. That's how this makes any money. I could just say, whatever, I don't care about the money. But if I don't care about the money, then how do I afford the equipment? How do I afford the roof over my head? So I have to care about the money, have no choice. And because I have to care about the money, I have to put the ads, and I have to participate in the cheapening. Everything is cheapened, except for the products. Those keep skyrocketing in price. But everything else loses value. The rhetoric of aspiration and inspiration loses value. Songs that used to have cultural power and significance lose value. But we're all part of it, we're all part of the system. None of us really defy it in any meaningful way. Even if we did, it would be quarantined. It almost self-quarantines, because the only way to really escape it is to live outside the bounds of society. And if you live outside the bounds of society, then you kind of lose the ability to influence society. So it's almost baked into the price of admission. It's hard to be funny anymore. I can be funny on my podcast that I do with Scotty and Paul, but it's hard to be funny here anymore. I used to do a lot more videos that were designed to just amuse people, to make them laugh, but I don't really find much to be funny anymore. I almost have to wear the mask of another person to be funny. I have to put on this sort of character that has developed over the course of doing Drunken Peasants and doing Deep Fat Fried, Onion Nuggets, whatever, the different podcasts that I've been part of. I almost have to put on a different persona for that and not be, I don't even want to say my real self, because what the hell is that? Just a different mask, really. But this one feels a little bit closer to the core. I don't know, there is a few distinctive variants of me. There's this guy that's kind of boring, that you don't really see super often. There's sort of a bombastic preacher persona. There's sort of a goofy edgelord persona. And I guess none of them really are like true, but some of them are truer than others. And I think this is probably the closest to the truth. And this guy doesn't have any sense of humor. Humor is just something that he intellectually knows how to do to an extent. And I don't consider myself to be a particularly funny person, even when I'm trying to be. I can get a good joke off here and there, mostly contingent on shock value kind of stuff. Occasionally I'll actually be clever, but it's rare. But I don't really feel like I have much of a sense of humor about things a lot of times. And the things that do get me genuinely laughing a lot of times are sort of dark. It's almost like I have to laugh at the absurd cruelty of reality, even though I don't always find myself completely at odds with the absurd cruelty of reality. It's almost, in some ways, refreshing to look at the cruelty of nature, to see how much nature doesn't give a shit about us, to see that nature just says, if a lion has to eat, the gazelle has to die. To see that that's baked into nature kind of tells me that, the darkness that's within you, within me, within every human being is not some unique flaw of humanity. It's not because we've lost our way or given in to some kind of depravity or perversion or whatever, or some sort of, moral collapse. It's just baked right into our nature. That's a lot of what Anton LaVey's Church of Satan talks about, is just being in touch with that. Carl Jung talking about actualization through integration of the shadow self, those kind of things. But I think that all too often we think of them as being some kind of uniquely human thing. That's why I was so fascinated by that George Carlin quote I played at the beginning. That's why I wrote this. You know, George Carlin says you see the light of the universe in somebody's eyes if you look closely enough or carefully enough or whatever he said. And I asked myself, the light of the universe? What of the dark? Can you see the darkness of the universe in somebody's eyes? Can you see it in mine? When you look in the mirror, do you see it in yours? That's what I wonder. I feel like if the light of the universe was really in people's eyes, then we would be better to each other. We wouldn't cheapen the sacred to sell each other plastic. We wouldn't do that, would we? If the light of the universe was in our eyes. Unless it's just so tainted by the darkness. But then the darkness has always been part of us. So what does the integrated self look like? Maybe at this point, a lot of people just are the darkness, and they need to actually integrate the light self into the totality of their being to even things out a little bit. Where is my sense of humor, huh? I'd like to have a sense of humor. I'd like to think things are funny. There are times when I chuckle to myself. But usually it's at wildly inappropriate times when something horrible happens. I guess I did just chuckle a little bit at myself there. Chuckling at the fact that I can only chuckle at the worst. They say humor is a defense mechanism against the tides of despair. I don't really feel despair, though, either. I feel almost just a serene acceptance of the nature of this reality. But I think part of that serene acceptance comes from the knowledge that the paradigm that has existed for a while, the paradigm that has existed hitherto this point, is coming to an end. I've talked about the age of living death, the age we've lived in, which I think started with Christianity and has carried on through capitalism in a slightly different form. But I don't think enough of a difference to delineate. It's just the age where human beings are expected to stifle themselves, to suppress individuality, to suppress uniqueness, to fit in, to conform, to be acceptable to the masses. But we've reached a point of chaotic static where that is increasingly becoming meaningless. And we're entering a point now where reality is so hard to discern that people choose their own adventure. And really, reality has always been difficult to discern, but there used to be a more shared delusion. But now that delusion is crumbling under the weight of postmodernism. And by the way, most of the people who rally against postmodernism are the most postmodern people. They just embrace their own variant of it that denies that it is what it is, which is fine. It's actually very postmodernist to be a postmodernist, but to deny that what you're doing is postmodernism. What's his name? The doofus. Jordan Peterson or Donald Trump. Although I don't think I've ever heard Donald Trump rally against postmodernism. Probably too many syllables for him. Under the weight of postmodernism, which really, if you think about it, is just extreme skepticism of everything, including reality. In that paradigm, this emergent paradigm, the age of chaos, there is going to be a re-individuation where people are going to begin to embrace their individuality again, and they are going to increasingly uncouple their ego from the approval of the masses. And you're going to see some very wacky stuff happen on that front. And it's going to create a lot of destabilization. And in response to that destabilization, you're going to see another contingent rise up that is really sort of like an acolytes of order. That's what I term them. And they are going to try to brutally suppress the re-individuation movement, the children of chaos. And that's going to be the war for the future. Forget the culture war. Forget any sort of other war that's going on this planet. The real war right now, and maybe you don't see it yet, but there will come a day when you're going to look back at me saying this and say, oh, he was right. Very soon now, you're going to distinctly see the two battle lines form. There is going to be a great teeming mass of very, 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 very loosely affiliated individualists who embrace their uniqueness, whatever that might mean. And there's going to be another group that deny their uniqueness and congeal into one fascistic mass to try to stop the other group. The acolytes of order already exist, but this other group I'm talking about, this group of re-individuators, if that's a word. If it's not, I've just coined it, fuck you. The re-individuators, the children of chaos, they are going to emerge, not all at once, but slowly over the course of the next, I don't know exactly the time scale, but you're going to see them more and more probably over the next few decades. And I don't know when it'll reach a fever pitch, but it will. And thus we enter the age of chaos. And really the acolytes of order are pretty much doomed to lose, because in their attempt to suppress the chaos, they only add to the chaos. And you're going to see a total paradigm shift in how human beings conduct themselves, how we live our lives, by what standards we live our lives. And in the words of Leonard Cohen in his song, The Future, there won't be nothing you can measure anymore. That's all going to go bye-bye. But at some point it will settle down. Once again, I'm not going to speculate as to an exact timeline, but the age of chaos won't be long compared to some of the other social ages. It's a transitional age. There will emerge a new order, and really chaos itself is just a higher order than human beings can comprehend, an order with too many variables for us to possibly account for. It'll be very akin, I think, to the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, the times immediately following the fall of Rome, when the sort of great stabilizing force of the world, for good and for ill, fell. And that influence no longer ruled as a sort of Thomas Hobbes Leviathan that was, holding things together. But assuming that we survive the age of chaos, we will emerge into a new, more stable paradigm. But what that looks like, I don't know. I don't know how, it'll be, we won't see the end of it. No one watching this, unless there's some sort of crazy life extension technology. We're not going to see the end of it, but we will see some of it. And I guess probably a lot of you are asking, like, how do you know all this? The truth is that I know it because I've always known it. I was born knowing it. And over the course of my life, I've slowly found the vocabulary to describe it. I've also spoken to chaos itself, spoken to various gods, goddesses, entities, whatever you want to call them, egregores, whether they actually exist in any sort of material or even ethereal way, or whether they're just forces within the zeitgeist that our minds give symbolic form. It doesn't really matter what the nature of their reality is. I can't remember if she's a Mesopotamian or Babylonian goddess, but I saw Namu, who created humanity out of clay to do the work that the other gods didn't want to do. They said, hey, we're gods. We shouldn't have to do all this manual labor. And she's like, oh, well, I'll create some lesser beings out of the clay of the earth, which is her skin, and they'll do the grunt work for us. We'll make them do the labor. I think it's funny that the creation myth of humanity in, once again, I can't remember if it was Mesopotamian or Babylonian, but their creation myth was so brutal, right? See, I'm kind of laughing about that they just created us as grunt labor, And before anyone thinks I've gone totally crazy, no, I don't believe that human beings were literally fashioned from clay. You know, get a symbolic brain here, people. You don't have to take everything literally. Just because I start referencing a god and saying that they fashioned us out of clay doesn't mean I literally think humanity was fashioned out of clay. Of course, we were created by a long process of evolution and so on and so forth. I recognize the scientific reality of things. But you also have to recognize that human beings create symbolic reality with their minds and with the zeitgeist and with their mass consciousness. And something very old came to me and said that the flood is coming. And they told me that it's part of my job to bring about the flood. And the flood is not literal. The flood is also symbolic. It's not about water. It's about a change in the nature of how human beings comport themselves, a change of how human beings perceive the world around them. And with that change of perception comes a change of attitude, a change of behavior, and with that comes a change of the actual paradigm under which we all live. I don't care if you think I'm insane. I don't care if you think that what I'm saying is a bunch of insane, crazy, woo-woo nonsense. That's fine. You're free to feel that way. I probably would too. In fact, I still do. Like, I hear what I'm saying. I recognize how it sounds. We have to look at reality through multiple lenses. I don't think that any one lens avails us to the total truth. And I think when we only look through a mythological lens, then we become sheep. When we only look through a scientific lens, we become robots. I think you have to look through multiple lenses to truly be a human being, to embrace the totality of an integrated human existence. And I suppose that I've spoken long enough for it to qualify as a sermon, or at least a discussion or something. I'll let you decide what exactly it is, but I guess it's something. Let me know what you think.